There we are.
Hey,
Hey there. How are you? You look gorgeous.
good. You too.
Thank you. I'm so excited for tonight. I just got finished with work, and let me tell you, I had to run upstairs, get my little life together because yes, and I'm excited about tonight because we're about to have a great conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think
Yes.
they ready.
Yes. So, we know Instagram Live gives, I think, like 40 minutes before it cuts you off. So let's hurry up. I'm going to introduce you properly, and then we're
Okay.
going to jump in, okay?
Okay.
So everybody that's joining in and everyone who will eventually see this live, please know that today we are talking to Nick Scott. Nick Scott is not only my friend, but she is an award-winning brand expert. She's a speaker. She is an influencer who is passionate about helping others with their businesses and harnessing their unique qualities and strengths and tools to differentiate themselves from other people in their industry. She is a speaker that is known nationally. She uses her keynote presentations to share her experiences in corporate, her women leadership skills, forums, collegiate programs, youth events. Nick is absolutely a part of it all. She is my soror. Like I said, she is a friend of mine. I've actually known her a long time ago. She also, many of you probably know her face because at one time she was a huge natural hair care influencer, before it became popular. Let's just go ahead and put it out there.
Yeah.
Again, she has been honored as one of Colorado's top 25 most powerful women, a recipient of the PR News Mover and Shaker Award. She is a wife of 19 years?
Going on 19, girl.
Yes, she is the mother of two amazingly beautiful and smart and talented daughters. And I am just going to tell y'all that today's conversation is going to be impactful. I'm so happy you accepted my invite. Yes, you ready to jump in?
I'm ready to jump in. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. So, all right, let's jump in. And I just told everyone who you are, and I gave some of these accolades, but who are you? Who is Nick Scott? Just the Black woman, the wife, the sister, the mother, the aunt. Who are you?
I am an observer, first of all. I don't think a lot of people would recognize that right away, especially listening to that. It doesn't sound like I would be much of a background person. But I'm a huge observer. I'm a question asker. I would consider myself, honestly, to be someone who goes against the grain and marches to the beat of her own drum. I take pride in the unique qualities about myself, and I'm very unapologetic about it, especially at this stage and age in my life. It's not something that I try to sugarcoat or hide. I'm an observer. I'm a question asker. I'm a huge introvert, except I'm not shy, right? And a lot of people like to, use that new term ambivert or whatever it is, where people can operate and function in both as both an introvert and an extrovert. No. I'm introverted. Extroversion is very exhausting for me. So I love to use my platforms, and I'm very grateful and thankful for digital because it is a great safe space for people like me who are creative, who love to share, who love to teach, but truly get exhausted and drained sometimes from being in the midst of a lot of people. Like it's overwhelming to me sometimes. So those are just a few things that you will not find in my YouTube videos. You won't find in my bio. You'll never hear me really speak about those things in any of my keynote presentations. That's just a little bit more about me.
I love it. I love that you shared that, and I know how authentic that is. I share in that introvert experience as well. People always meet me and assume that I'm extroverted, and I'm like, no, I'm doing this because I'm out. But what I really want to do is shut down when this is all said and done. So That leads me to this question because, like I said, you were a natural hair influencer that YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, before people started to monetize their platforms, you were already being sought after by, big natural care, hair care companies, and just amassed a whole following digitally before it became popular. Can you talk, you absolutely did. Can you talk about not only maybe how you did that strategically, but then can you also talk about how you've transitioned from that to move it to where you're leveraging your background and your career to use digital in that way, even though you're still a part of the natural hair movement, you've just transitioned your platform. Can you share a little bit on that?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I have to say, digital did not exist when I was in college, when I was a young adult, when I was a youth. So I'm fortunate enough to be a part of Generation X that were young enough to be open and adapting to some of the new technologies and things like that. But we still have a healthy dose of fear and skepticism when it comes to new things, kind of like our parents who are baby boomers, right?
Yeah.
So I'm part of that I don't know what they call us. There's some term they call us or whatever. But so coming into this digital platform, into the digital space, I completely tried to remain anonymous. I'm a very private person, and you can't do that. So when you're talking about strategy, there was none. I literally learned as I went. I tested as I went. I didn't even know what I was doing until it was actually happening. And once I realized what was happening, that's when I decided, you know what, this is something that I need to get a grasp on, that I really need to be a lot more strategic about, a lot more thoughtful about, and planning out exactly what my next steps were when I was in the natural hair world, right?
Yeah.
Now it's just this big thing. Everybody does it. Anybody does it. But back then we were all really just learning as we went. So back then it wasn't really a strategy. When I transitioned out of natural hair a couple years ago, that was strategic.
You did it very well.
Strategic. It was very strategic, and it did not come without some drawbacks, right? And I anticipated those drawbacks because when we're talking about marketing and we're talking about branding, we know that your audience, they get hooked on one thing. McDonald's, it was all about the burger. Taco Bell, it was all about the taco. Nike, it was all about the shoe. And when they decided, and when I decided to start to expand my brand, to expand my audience, of course, you lose some of that some of that fan base, right?
Yeah.
And that came with it. So my strategy going from natural hair into what I'm doing now, I had to go get some real life skills. So the first thing I did was go get a job.
That's a good place to start.
It really is, because what it does is it really starts to make you a credible source, right?
Yes, exactly.
Again, digital was still new to a lot of people. So they're like, oh, that's cute. You do make YouTube videos. But fortunately, I was in a space, it was higher education, that allowed me to really use that content strategy, the same content strategy skills that I learned to build my YouTube channel, my Instagram, my Facebook, my websites, my blogs, and all of the things that I was doing on my own. I was able to take that same skill set and apply them in the university setting. So that was the first thing that I did. And then once I was in that space, I had the credibility, right? I had the following. So I wasn't just talking.
Right.
I had the corporate skill set that some people, and I have the education. My degree's in public relations. So then I was able to take all three of those things and start to become a speaker who teaches the things that I have learned through education, through hands-on corporate experience, and through my own trials and errors as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned a couple things I'm going to hit on, but the first one I want to hit on is the testing and the learning. And I should have poured myself a little drink too. The testing and the learning. So in the corporate space, right, we test now because, like you mentioned, now we have data, right? Where we didn't have all that data years ago. So when you were testing and learning, because we didn't have the metrics and analytical capabilities we do now, what were some of the things that you were testing then that now you would tell a new up and coming person, no, this is for sure what you want to do, what you want to test and learn?
So I learned a lot the hard way. The first thing that you want to make sure that you're getting your feedback from is from your audience. Like I was not audience focused, but again, there was no strategy, right? When you define your audience and you know exactly who you're talking to, you also know who you're not talking to. And I think that's very important. What I see a lot of influencers doing now, and I even tried it back then, was content, right? I was a natural hair YouTuber, but you go on my channel, even today, you'll see videos about DIY, about recipes, you know, no. That might work for some people, but for new people starting out, you need to pick one thing and
find your
that
niche.
one thing. That's right. Find that one thing and master it. Again, let's go back to Taco Bell and McDonald's.
Yeah.
They started out McDonald's. A hamburger, not a cheeseburger, not fries, a hamburger.
They mastered that and then they built upon it.
That's exactly right. And I think when you're becoming a new influencer, it's easy to get caught up in the numbers. Well, the numbers that you really should be paying attention to and testing, again, are those audience numbers. What is your audience saying to you? If your audience is saying, this is what we want, McDonald's, hi, I like cheese on my burgers, then maybe you can start to respond in that way. Instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, which I mean, it's easy because we're so dynamic as people, right?
Yeah.
It's easy, but just focus on one thing, master that. And I promise you will see much more success in that, listening to your audience, paying attention to who's engaging with you. And then guess what we need to do? Because this is social media, y'all. We need to be social.
You gotta be social. You gotta talk back and forth. You gotta actually answer the comments after someone leaves them.
Right. I made that. That was a mistake that I made. That was testing for me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm busy. Who's not busy at this stage in our lives? Everybody has side hustles and families and things that they're doing. So the comments sometimes can be like whatever, and we take those things for granted. Don't do it. Yeah. This is social media. Yeah. And things have changed. And since you do have the numbers, back then we didn't. I paid attention to my my audience, listened to my comments. Of course, I watched the number of views to see what they were responding to. I also tested times of days to post, right? Yes. Because we have those thresholds, those best practices that work. But if you start to train your audience to expect something, then guess what? They're going to expect it at that time.
As long as you're consistent.
Thank you, girl. You have to be consistent. And it's okay. It's okay to start where you start. Don't look at someone, someone will look at my numbers and say, oh my gosh, she's all of that or whatever. I could look at somebody else's numbers and say, oh my gosh, she's all of that. Yeah. You start where you start. I love that. Start to be authentic and organic with your own. Can I say something? This is not the question you asked.
That's okay.
Do not buy followers.
Say it again.
Don't do it. Y'all don't buy followers, okay?
Exactly. And don't do those follow groups where it's like, oh, everybody in the group follow each other. That's not a quality follow. That audience isn't, back to what you were saying, really dialed into that niche. You may be selling hair care products, but honestly, the person that you have asked to follow you doesn't even have natural hair. So right. You want to make sure, I get exactly what you're saying. You want to make sure that the quality of the audience is there, not the quantity.
That's right. Get it. It's easy to get caught up in the quantity. Yeah. And organic growth is still the best growth. And I promise it will come if you're consistent, if you're authentic. Okay. Because these Gen Zers, they can read right through that crap.
Yes, they can. I kind of think of, so I've been on social media now probably 10 years, about
Mhm.
10 years, seriously more in terms of being strategic around the way I use it, probably for the last two, but I can read between the lines as well. And I hate to say it this way, but there are people that I have followed that have this amazing feed and this amazing life, and then you find out later, well, they're going through a divorce, or you find out later, like things like that. And not to say that they have to share it, but it would be good to know that they're bringing you their whole self as you're following them through that journey of life. I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you have kids, share the fact that your day was ridiculous,
Right.
and that the baby was crying at the top of their lungs, because your audience can relate to that. I get it.
Yep, making those genuine connections.
Yeah.
It was in 2018, I think it was, where Mark Zuckerberg had put out on Facebook that he was changing the algorithm. Again, we know the algorithm on Facebook changes literally
It's
every
quarterly.
10 minutes.
Right. Exactly.
Every 10 minutes. But he had said, very specifically that they were going to start to focus on genuine connections.
Engagements. Yes, right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
everybody was like, well, what does that mean? That means that human to human, those connections that we
That's
make
right.
with people. And I think that's what makes influencer marketing so great in 2020 versus, back then we were all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Now we know those human to human connections are really what sells.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, moving a little bit from that piece and more into your corporate experience. So now you have amassed this following on social media. You found the sweet spot, the sweet sauce on how to command attention, generate an actual movement, if you will, and you in some ways can bring some more authenticity to a university, like you mentioned. What was the experience now that you are working with probably more resources?
Yeah.
Number one. And then number two, having to stick within a brand reputation, if you will, that was vastly different than who you were on social, but yet you still needed to garner that same attention.
Two things come to top of mind for me. First of all, I have to be honest, it was very hard to leverage the resources that I had when I went into a team setting. I was used to being a one-woman show. I would outsource things here and there, but I did all of my graphics. I did all of my digital. I did all of my SEO. I did all of my HTML. I did everything. All of my video editing, producing everything. So it was hard sometimes. Because I'd forget. I honestly would just forget. And sometimes, honestly, it's just easier to do things yourself. And get it done and get it knocked out and move on with the next project. So once I realized that I had these resources available to me, it opened up a whole new, no. Not when I realized. When I accepted that I had these resources available to me, it opened up a whole new world. And it made my work that much more compelling. It made my work that much more sharp, because these are people who are trained to do graphics and video and all of these things. My job was more or less content strategy. That's what I was the expert at. So once you start to combine, the magic was there. I just needed to, let the pot get filled and start to let that stuff do what it do.
Sure. No, I get it. I get it. It's interesting when you have so many resources around you that you don't know how to organize and use them properly. And I love that you use the word accept. It's just like, the picture, it's a very famous picture that we usually see at our grandmama's house. And there's one arm hanging down and one reaching up. Do you know what I'm talking about? Look like they're in the water. And so you have a lifeline, but yet you will not pull and take it, right?
That's right.
And so I love that you said, I finally accepted that. And then that exposed me and made me so much sharper.
It does. It truly, truly does. And in the sense of working within a restricted brand, I kept my social media life at first very separate from my higher education world, because there was no blending the two. Like, how do you blend that? Like, I couldn't, and I didn't want to be known as the natural hair guru at work. I wanted to be known for what I was doing, for the benchmarks that I was hitting, for the transformational things that I was doing for the university, and not for what I was doing for the natural hair community. So at first I kept those very separate, and because I did that, it was easy for me to work within the confines of their brand guidelines.
I get it. I love it. So right now, of course, we are all sitting back and probably have been very mentally and emotionally drained and exhausted from everything that's going on in the last couple of weeks, but we all know for hundreds of years, right? So as you think back on your corporate experience, can you share any times where, as a woman of quality and quantity, meaning you have the, like you said, degrees, the amount of years of experience, all of that, and then you also know in a quality type of way of how to leverage social properly, but in corporate, where you met with times where it wasn't enough, and knowing that your Black face sometimes may be why they wouldn't accept your expertise?
100%. I was hired in my first position in 2014. And while that would have been a transformational time for social media and digital, and you would expect that people are hiring folks to take over these assets for their business, that they would invest in it, every other team and department in my division had a budget. I didn't have a budget. Somebody tell me how in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and beyond, you are supposed to run a successful social media program with no budget. And I asked for budget, and I would ask for budget, and I see money just all over the division, but never any my way. I also operated for many years as, again, just one person.
One woman show.
One person. I'm like, we need a team of people. So in that first position, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to work for the business school. I was offered a position, a higher position, a management position at the business school. So I went over to the business school, and as I was getting ready to leave for the business school, my boss tells his boss, when we repost this position, we're going to post it as a director level. Heather. So I read your Facebook post today. I have a history of sending very lengthy, detailed emails, and that was one of the times. And I let them know, like, excuse me, I've been doing this, working at both a strategic and tactical level.
Sure. But now you out searching. You're looking for the right candidate, and you're right here.
So yes, those two things, the budget and the position of trying to get to the level, trying to have a seat at the table.
Sure.
You want to see things happen with your social media and your digital, but you don't want
to do it. Yeah, no, I get it.
And totally, especially in a place, I live in Colorado, so.
Nope, I get it. Okay, all right. We're going to transition just a bit. I totally get it, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's definitely something that we can all relate to, and I would have been remiss if I didn't bring that up, knowing everything we're going through. And also, I wanted to bring that up because there is a whole conversation about the privilege that some of our counterparts have with social and digital media that we don't share. There's a whole nother topic when you talk about Black influencers or Black, I'll just say marketing professionals versus our counterparts. So We'll have to do another live on
Girl,
that.
because that is real.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So I want to talk also about life in general, right? So we already hit on the fact that you are going on 19 years of marriage. Mm-hmm. Our generation doesn't see that. We don't see it not only amongst ourselves and our friends, but we are the generation that came from the parents that began to divorce and began to not marry. So I would really love for you to talk about, how did you get to year 19? How have you gotten here this far? Because, you know, our grandparents used to do 50 and 60 years before they passed, you know, but to see, again, our generation, we hear far more of broken marriages or no marriages at all. And I would love to kind of hear your secret sauce to that as well.
Okay. Well, let me just say this. 19 years of anything does not come without its challenges.
There you go.
Okay. And I want to be very, very clear about that, because my husband and I, we are more in love with each other today. And he still gets on my nerves, y'all. But we're more in love with each other today than we were 19 years ago. Mm-hmm. So how did we get here? It took a lot of growth on both of our parts. We were very young when we got, older than some, but younger than most when we got married. And so we've had to grow together. And you understand that when things grow, it's pain. That's why they call them growing pains, right? So in order for our marriage to grow to 19 years, we had to experience a lot of growing pains. One thing that I say a lot is I have had to learn, and this is sometimes hard for Black women, I'm just going to be honest. I have had to learn to fall back and to be selfless. And I know some of your people listening are like, what? Fall back.
Fall back. I'm a boss. Exactly.
Let me tell y'all something. And this is something I had to learn the hard way. Because I'm very goal oriented. I'm strong. I used to say, you ain't my daddy. I can do it by myself. I can.
Right.
Like, I'm a sister. Like, I don't need you. Don't open my door.
You know, I get it.
You to do that.
I ain't asking your opinion. I already have my plan.
Exactly. But let me tell you something, Heather. I had to learn that just because I can do it, and everybody, he knows that I can do it, doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah.
So yes, I had to learn to fall back, and being selfless is so very important. My marriage, my position as a wife in this marriage, I have learned after damn near 20 years, is not about me. It's not about me focusing on everything that is wrong with him and trying to change him. How about I look at myself on how I can be a better partner for him? How can I love him the way that he needs to be loved? And I promise, in return, if you have, he'll return the favor. He will return the favor. So focusing on me and trying to be the best version of Nick that I can be as a wife, I think is the biggest thing that I've had to learn. Of course, communication, sex. Y'all got to have sex. Okay. Like,
got to.
Girl, I could tell you stories. We ain't got time. But you got to have sex. You have to have communication. You have to have trust. You have to be transparent with each other. You have to be partners. When he holds me accountable, I had to learn that it was not an attack on me. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, because you're supposed to be able to aid in each other's growth. And in order to do that, you have to call things out. That may be uncomfortable, but it has to be said. And your partner is the closest thing to you. So they're going to see things about you that maybe nobody else sees in the comfort of the home.
That's right. And they want to better. My husband wants me to be the best wife for him. We're on the same team. Being selfless learning how to fall back,
Mm-hmm.
like we're very traditional in our house.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have to allow him to be the man.
Sure.
Like,
Sure. I get it. I
what's
get
the
it.
point of him having a wife if,
Right. I
girl,
get it. So you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned partnership, and then also just kind of growing each other. So you guys have a podcast, the Naked Proverbs. I've listened. I love it. For everyone who is listening and who will see this, please check out the Naked Proverbs. It is in a very informative podcast. And I say the word informative because it really gets you to understand partnership. As I watch you guys talk back and forth, you can tell that number one, there's respect there. I shouldn't say some respect there. Number two, you can also tell that there is experience there. And then you can also tell that the conversations are going to inform you about how you can build legacy as a family. So, talk a little bit about the birth of that podcast. How did you all get there, and how did you align on doing that? Because I know Richard, he's not like on social media like that. So how did you get him? How did y'all get there? How was the Naked Proverbs birth?
we actually were supposed to do something like this like 10 years ago. We
Mm.
had talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and life happens, and think
Mm-hmm.
about 10 years ago where we were. Girl, would be a totally different podcast right now. We were not in a space 10 years ago when we initially started talking about the concept
Mm-hmm.
to minister to people the way that we do now, to inform people, to be as naked as we are
Mm-hmm.
in our podcast now. We were not in that space back then.
I love
um,
it.
and so when the idea came back around, I don't remember if it was he or I. I've been in the digital space for a long time, so I might not start off all the way up here, but I want to start at the best place that I can start, because there's no going back. Back to
Mm-hmm.
some of those tips that I gave before, I know what I want, and this is the direction that I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm trying to get everything together. And finally, he's like, look, I don't have time for your perfectionism,
Either we doing this or we
or
not.
we're not.
Right.
So that lit a fire in my behind. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, we literally, if you go back and listen to that first episode, it was terrible, but we chose a time. It was terrible. The audio was so bad. It's embarrassing. Like, it's embarrassing. But I read a post on social media the other day, and it basically said, your first podcast is going to be bad. Your first YouTube video is going to be bad. Your first workout is going to be bad. Your first run is going to be, and it's going to be bad. But you have to start. And
Got
like
to
I
start
said
somewhere.
earlier, start where you start, and you can
Mm-hmm.
build on that. The hardest thing about doing any of this stuff in the digital space is putting yourself out there. If you can get over that fear and put yourself out there to help people, because that's what we want, to truly help people. We
Mm-hmm.
truly want to preserve the Black family,
Mm-hmm.
the Black marriage. We want
Mm-hmm.
to show people and demonstrate to people, like, hey, people, we are normal people who have been through shit just like you going through
Yeah.
shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you can work it out the same way that we worked it out. We're not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but we
Mm-hmm.
want to show you that, yes, 19 years is possible. And
Sure.
19 happy years. We're just not cohabitating and being roommates up in here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, we
No, I
truly
love that.
we truly are working to build a legacy, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to help other couples do that. I
Sure.
hope
So
that answered the question for
it
y'all.
did. It did. And so you led me into my next thought, because one of the podcasts was specifically about legacy building. And I remember you guys had two definitions of building a legacy. Can you talk about those two definitions, and the representation that they have for Black families in terms of the need that we have to have a legacy?
Girl, that's deep, and it runs deep. And I truly think that it is in our DNA as Black people to want a legacy. The first definition that we talked about in that podcast episode is the normal definition that we know. And it's basically about leaving money and inheritance in a will to your kids, right? And I think that is the definition that most of us latch onto when we're talking about building a legacy. We're doing this for our kids so that they don't have to struggle the way that I did. That other definition of legacy is very simple. Anything left for you from previous generations. Anything. So that's habits, that's behaviors, that's language, that is the way that you dress, the way that you wear your hair. That is, we talk about CP time, and you know,
that's
we
passed
went
down
to
through
HBCU, you know.
Yes.
Zaza time is what I believe they called it when I was back. And we pride ourselves on that.
Yeah.
But that in itself is a legacy that you're leaving for your limb of the family tree, right? We always talk about wanting to break those generational curses. But what are you doing? Like, you have to be intentional. Everything that you, I always say all the time, and it's a little different now that my girls are older, but when they were younger, I would say all the time to other moms, I have 4 eyes and four ears and 2 mouths, watching, listening, and saying everything that I do.
Yeah.
Everything that I do. That is the legacy. My girls are learning how to be a wife, how to hold a marriage together, how to cater to their husband and be a partner in a marriage from me. That is a legacy that I'm leaving for my kids. So it's not always about money and businesses and wealth and houses. I mean, that's part of it too. Let's not minimize that or ignore that, because that's very important. But let's also be mindful of the things that we're saying. I'm tired of being broke. Are you broke? Are you? Because you look good to me. Like, let's start to change what our limb of the family tree, what our relationship is with money is. You know, let's start to change what it looks like when we walk into a room. There's always going to be something wrong. Well, how about we start leaving a legacy of seeing the positive in things instead of always seeing the negative in things, you know. And let's be clear, Black folks, we got a lot of shit to be pissed off about. We do.
But we have a lot of things that we should be celebrating on a day-to-day basis.
There it is. There it is. And that in itself is a legacy. So, yes.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I really love it. I also, when you spoke about legacy, thought about the fact that you're also an author. And can you talk about, I know the book and I know what it is, but talk about the book that you wrote, because for me, immediately I'm thinking of legacy, because what you're giving to these young kids, you're automatically planting that seed. So can you talk about that as well?
Absolutely. So I am a published author. I self-published my books, which now that things are the way they are, I'm glad that I did. The first book is 10 Easy Steps to Go Natural Without Cutting Your Hair Off. And it's a very quick read for anyone that's looking to transition from relaxed to natural hair. The second book is my children's book, which is My Hair Is So Happy. And that book was birthed literally from my own children and conversations that I had with them when they were little. And my youngest daughter used to say, when, ironically, as I was doing her hair, my hair is so happy. My hair, like, she, you know, which again, how many of us have traumatic experiences?
Correct.
Hair done.
Exactly.
Right. So this book was intended to instill positivity for girls of all hues with highly textured hair. And it was intentional that it was all hues, because that is one commonality that I find across races and colors. When you have highly textured hair, we all have the same
struggle.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to plant that seed early for, the book is intended for preschool up to about maybe second grade. So I wanted to start to plant that seed early for little girls to understand that, hey, nothing is wrong with your hair. Nothing. As a matter of fact, the other little girls on the playground probably wish they had your hair. And let you know that this hair is not something that's a curse. It's a blessing because it's what God gave you.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I also love the fact that, back to the legacy piece, about how, yes, like you said, we have some things that are a financial resource, but the legacy that you're passing day to day by just being yourself, and how critically important it is to make sure that you're passing down positivity, because we can't get into the space of constantly passing down strife and anger and struggle. Like, nobody wants that, and it's not fair. So we have to be very mindful of that. I love that. Also on the podcast, you made mention of the 5 love languages. So I think this is really dating us, because this goes back to almost when we were in college, when the 5 love languages came out. And it was super popular. I think Oprah had it. Everybody was talking about these 5 love languages. And is it Gary Chapman, I think, is the... Oh, can you hear me?
So.
Okay.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was doing the whole media circus and everything. So can you talk a little bit, now that we've talked about the 19 years of matrimony, and also some of the sweet sauce and legacy building and things of that sort, what do you think about those 5 love languages? Because I didn't hear any of those principles as a part of your how we got here.
I would say that that's the beginner's guide.
Okay.
I'm very vocal on the podcast about not being a fan of the 5 love languages from episode 1, and I think we're going into episode 44, and I have not been convinced that it is the be all end all to how you should understand to love your spouse and how you receive love. I think it's a great foundation to be built upon, because the fact of the matter is, no one is any of those 5 love languages all of the time. So you take the little test, you read the little book, and then you're like, ooh, my husband is acts of service. And you're doing acts of service. And then he's like, dude. And you're like, well, what's wrong? This is your love language. It's because, A, there's no scientific evidence in what this dude did. He just came up with some stuff on his own and made $1 billion. You know how, people like that can do in America. And B, again, we are dynamic people. We are multifaceted people. We go through different things every single day. After we go out in these streets, my husband comes home being persecuted, knocked down, dragged out. Sometimes he doesn't want acts of service. Like, that doesn't make him feel good. It might make him feel less appreciative. So my criticism on the 5 love languages is mainly because there's no scientific evidence in it. And I just get sick and tired of people talking about love languages. Like, we're all the love languages and more.
Yeah.
There's so many languages that aren't even included in that.
Yeah. And I could see, I know even for me, I may be acts of service this month, but next month I may actually want words of affirmation. It depends on where I am in my journey as not only a woman, but just, evolution, how I'm evolving. So they're very interchangeable, and you can oftentimes get stuck in that and find yourself doing something that the partner has surpassed.
They're done. They've moved on. I also believe that my husband, he pointed out, back when we met in college, he was all about gifts. He still likes gifts, but that's not, like, he'd rather have physical touch at this point than a gift. So I mean, they're good for what they are. But
I love it. You said that's a beginner's guide.
Go deeper, you have to go deeper. You just have to go deep. It's very superficial and surface level.
Yeah, that's like someone saying that all that you are is a Black woman who lives in Colorado. And you're like,
Yes.
no, there's so many other characteristics of that make up Nick. So I get it.
That's right.
I get it. All right. So, all right, we haven't talked about kids. We have absolutely talked about background, right? In terms of you being a bigger influencer and then going into the corporate space, leading social and digital teams. We've talked about marriage and we've talked about legacy building and showing your girls the importance of all of that. Your oldest is about to go to college. So the question I have is, with all that you've taught her and all that you know, what is your biggest hope for her in her first year of college?
For her to truly understand, to think through her choices, and that her choice has a ripple effect.
Oh, yes.
So when I say ripple effect, if you throw a rock in the water, we went fishing this weekend and with my nephews and my cousin, and it was, it was just family reunion basically. And some people were trying to fish. My nephew kept throwing rocks in the water. So first you see where the rock lands, right? But what you don't see is how the fish scatter.
That's right.
Under the water, right? But what you can also see is the rock lands and then all these ripples.
That's right.
All the way out. So I want her to understand that her choice affects what you can see and what you can think through, right? Those are the ripples. But it also affects things that you cannot see and that you don't know.
This is good. Yes.
So like the police officer in Minneapolis made a choice to put his knee on George Floyd's neck and murder him in the street on video with witnesses, right? That was his choice. That's the rock.
Yep.
All of this, what you're seeing, is not necessarily,
the impact.
It's a ripple effect.
That's right.
But then underneath what you're not seeing and what a lot of people aren't seeing, it's how it's affecting people in their homes. The conversations that people have to have with their children, much younger than mine. So I hope that she really can understand in her little 18-year-old mind that
this is,
her choice, every choice you make. My choice to be on here with you right now has a ripple effect. Every choice.
Yeah, especially, again, where we started, leading back to social media, digital, you are creating a lifelong track record that is now etched in stone. And so you and I know we met in college. We didn't have social media to track what we were doing. So I'm pretty sure that you're like, listen here, don't get to school and not only make choices that impact her, but that impact our family, impact you years from now that you cannot take back to the cop.
That's right. And that goes on both the positive side and the negative side, right? So we think about choices and the consequences, but what about choices and the rewards?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I really want her to understand, like, if there was one thing, choices matter.
That's good. That's good. And again, I love it because it goes back again to legacy, right? We as Black folks, one of the things that we have to be very intentional about is our choices. That legacy doesn't come if you don't make the right choice.
Nope.
So it all ties. It all ties. Well, I'm looking at the time and I know we're going to get cut off soon. Yeah. So we're going to have to do this again. We absolutely are. But before we do, I want to do this lightning round that we talked about.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yes. So this is going to be fun. I only have 11 words. Okay. But before we do that, I want you first to tell everybody how they can find you on YouTube and also how they can purchase your book.
Okay. I'm everywhere on the internet at iNickScott. So iNickScott.com is my website. You can get connected with everything that I've done and I am doing. All of my social media is iNickScott. My books are available on Amazon. Just Google me.
Google me, baby. Right.
Not to sound whatever, but Nik Scott. And it's like, seriously, you can get connected with my books. You can get connected with my website, my social media, and everything, my podcasts.
And if somebody wants you to come out and speak, they can go on your website as well?
My website is the hub for everything.
All right, awesome. All right, you ready to jump into the questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Whatever comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind, I don't care if it's a cuss word, nothing, whatever comes to mind. You ready?
Okay.
All right, mimosas.
Oh, love language.
Really? Okay.
Girl.
Okay. Failure.
Success.
Okay. Obama.
Barack.
Okay. All right. Hip hop.
Culture.
Okay. Aruba.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yes. Okay. Sisterhood.
Heather.
Oh, thank
King.
you. Okay. Atlanta.
Oh, girl, Freaknik.
Yes. Okay. Oxtails.
One word? Delicious?
Okay. All right. COVID.
Bitch.
Exactly. All right. Here's the last word. Home ownership.
Legacy.
Yes. Good. This is good. This is good. Nick, I appreciate it. This has been fun. You have dropped a lot of gems. I will make sure that we save this. Again, for anyone that's watching, please make sure that you connect with Nick. Follow her on her social media accounts. Look into her website, and also follow her on LinkedIn. I'm here to tell you that she is speaking at all types of conferences, forums, and things of that sort. So follow her. We have to support each other, whether that be if it's a virtual conference, whether it be something like this, whether it be in person. We have to support each other. So get connected with her. Thank you again, Nick. It has been so much fun. I love you, girl.
Love you too. Thank y'all. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.